And the hard out means you have to be done. The show is going to black at such and such time.
Yes. How many seconds until the hard
10.
out? 10 seconds? That's when you asked?
Andy, I said, Khloe, and just real quickly in the seconds we have, there have been some stories that Robert Kardashian is not your father.
What if the most famous family in reality television is built on a lie so deep, even they can't admit it out loud? A lie whispered through courtrooms, hospital corridors, and Beverly Hills living rooms for over 3 decades. The mystery that began as tabloid gossip has now become one of pop culture's longest-running investigations. The question of who Khloe Kardashian's real father is, not a passing rumor, not a meme, but a thread that runs straight through the heart of the Kardashian empire, backed, allegedly, by deathbed confessions, financial hush agreements, and the people who knew Robert Kardashian best.
So I delayed and delayed and delayed, and they were like, 5 seconds, 4. And I was like, and is Robert Kardashian really your father? And she was like, yes. And I was like, and we're back after your local news. And so that was embarrassing.
And after you went off, did she say anything?
She was lovely.
Yeah.
Other people ran down the stairs going, what just happened? How did you ask her with 3 seconds? Who's your father?
We've all seen how the story has shifted over the years. From offhand jokes on talk shows to tense exchanges on Keeping Up with the Kardashians, this isn't some anonymous internet theory. The question of Khloe's paternity has been dissected by journalists, insiders, and even the family themselves. And the more we learn, the harder it becomes to ignore that the story may have been quietly confirmed not by gossip columns, but by the people closest to Robert in his final years. The man who once stood beside O.J. Simpson in court, who raised 4 children in the spotlight, and who reportedly left this world with one last secret he couldn't take to the grave. It starts with Pastor Ken Gullickson. He wasn't a publicist, not a lawyer, not a producer. He was Robert's pastor, a man of faith who officiated family milestones and listened when the spotlight turned harsh. Years after Robert's passing, Gullickson claimed that Robert spoke about Khloe with deep affection, but always with a tone that implied something unspoken. According to him, Robert loved Khloe fiercely, but once said something that hinted she wasn't his blood daughter, a statement that carried more weight coming from a man of faith than from any gossip source. We can't forget that this is someone Robert trusted, someone with no incentive to invent scandal. When a pastor makes that kind of suggestion, it's no longer rumor, it becomes testimony.
I want to make sure we get to the story about Khloe Kardashian and Savannah Guthrie. Why not, of course, but basically some background. Savannah Guthrie, House of Today, recently apologized to Khloe Kardashian for, in 2012, asking Khloe Kardashian about rumors that Robert Kardashian is not her biological father.
Then came John Ashley, Robert's second wife, and the words that reignited the fire in 2012. She alleged that before his passing in 2003, Robert quietly told her, "You know, Khloe's not really a Kardashian, right?" Those words, reportedly said months before his illness took him, hit like a confession. He wasn't young, reckless, or angry. He was a man facing his own mortality, speaking plainly to the woman he'd married late in life. He had nothing left to gain, nothing to protect. And yet, instead of clarifying the story, those words were buried beneath layers of legal letters and family denials. To this day, the Kardashian camp has never directly addressed that claim. If we line up the timeline, it's impossible not to notice how it all converges. Khloe was born in 1984, right around the time Kris Jenner later admitted to having an affair while still married to Robert. She's never named the man involved. That single gap in the family's otherwise carefully curated narrative has kept the rumor alive. Because as soon as Kris published her 2011 memoir acknowledging her infidelity, the internet started connecting dots. And those dots pointed toward 2 names, O.J. Simpson and Kris's longtime hairstylist, Alex Roldan. For years, O.J. was the more sensational theory, partly because of the family's deep history with him. Robert served on his defense team during the infamous trial, and Kris was one of Nicole Brown Simpson's closest friends. The closeness of those relationships created a breeding ground for speculation. But both Kris and O.J. have denied any romantic involvement. In a 2022 interview, O.J. called the story not even close to being true, and Kris labeled it disgusting gossip. Still, their denials didn't end the conversation. It only shifted attention toward the man who'd been in Kris's orbit for decades, Alex Roldan.
I think we're out of time. I was going to ask nothing more to say about what people said about your father, your biological father.
I don't know who my daddy is, I guess.
Yes,
I
you
don't know.
do. That Khloe thinks.
Roldan wasn't a stranger. He was family adjacent, part of Kris's trusted inner circle long before the world knew her as a manager or business mogul. He styled her hair for years, appearing in old photos beside her long before any cameras followed the Kardashians. Insiders claim that when Kris was still married to Robert, she spent long hours at Alex's West Hollywood salon. And then, years later, when fans began pointing out the uncanny resemblance between Alex and Khloe, especially in early photos from before Khloe's cosmetic work, The internet exploded. Same nose, same eyes, same jawline. It wasn't just fans noticing it. Even Kylie Jenner once posted a photo of Khloe and Alex together with the caption, "First official photo of my sister and her dad." It was deleted, but screenshots live forever. Behind the laughter, some say there's a reason Kris has worked so hard to keep the conversation contained. Tabloid insiders have repeatedly alleged that Kris paid Alex a staggering $30 million under a strict NDA. No bank records have ever confirmed it, but the rumor persists because, as some claim, it fits Kris's playbook. Control the story before it controls you. Why pay such a sum if there's nothing to hide? Why silence a man who could easily dismiss the theory publicly if it were false? It's the kind of financial move that feels less like damage control and more like crisis prevention. Even Khloe's middle name, Alexandra, has become a point of speculation. To most, it sounds like a simple family choice. But for those following the money trail, it feels like a quiet acknowledgement, a clue hiding in plain sight. And when we place that next to the physical evidence, the resemblance becomes almost eerie. When side-by-side photos of Alex and Khloe circulate online, the comparisons aren't subtle. Before surgery, before the stylists and filters, Khloe's features aligned more with Alex than with any of her supposed siblings. The same bone structure that stands out in a family otherwise known for identical dark features.
Guthrie made an apology, and then Khloe Kardashian responded and said, quote, "It takes a big person to take accountability," in an Instagram post. So let's get a little bit here, S9, of the Savannah Guthrie response.
Meanwhile, we can't overlook Robert's own actions in those final years. Despite friends insisting he questioned Khloe's paternity, he famously refused to take a DNA test. "Whoever her father is, she's my child," he reportedly told friends, choosing love over proof. But love doesn't erase doubt, it just hides it. Pastor Gullickson and John Ashley's stories align on one point. Robert loved Khloe, but he wasn't blind to the whispers around him. And those whispers didn't come from tabloids, they came from within his own circle. By the early 2010s, the conversation had reached a boiling point. The family even turned it into an episode of their show, Season 7, Episode 1, aptly titled, "Who's Your Daddy?" Kris Jenner tried to convince Khloe to take a DNA test, claiming it was something she needed to feel complete. Khloe refused on camera, saying she didn't need a test to define her family. To viewers, it looked like closure, but to those following the deeper story, her refusal sounded more like someone who already knew the answer and wanted to keep it buried. Behind that polished reality facade, the questions only multiplied. If Kris was so certain that Robert was Khloe's biological father, why push so hard for a public test? Why film it at all? The family has always known how to control a narrative, yet in this case, they seemed desperate to get ahead of something. Around that same time, Robert's widow Ellen claimed that Khloe broke down after learning a painful truth about the family's history, calling her father in tears. Ellen later said those calls revealed how deeply Khloe feared what was already being whispered behind closed doors.
Because after nearly a decade away from the cameras, Rob Kardashian finally reappeared.
Rob and I were very similar in a lot of ways. He's super sweet, the funniest person I know. I love having him around.
Everywhere we look, the clues are scattered but consistent. A confession from a pastor, an unguarded remark from a dying man, an NDA that insiders say cost millions, and a middle name that feels less random with every new discovery. And yet, despite all that, the official story remains perfectly sealed. The question that has haunted the Kardashians for decades is still hanging in the air. Because if Khloe isn't Robert's biological daughter, then what is Kris Jenner protecting? What secret has cost millions in hush agreements and years of controlled silence? When Khloe refused the DNA test on national television back in 2012, the public read it as defiance, a daughter protecting her father's name. But over a decade later, that moment looks less like loyalty and more like strategy. Insiders familiar with the production of that episode claimed Khloe's refusal wasn't spontaneous at all. It was controlled, rehearsed, and most importantly, deliberate. Because by then, according to those same sources, Khloe may have already taken a private DNA test off camera, right after Kris Jenner's explosive 2011 memoir reignited the rumors about her affair. If that's true, then her televised rejection wasn't about not knowing. It was about making sure no one else ever would. The idea that Khloe might have known the truth for years adds a new dimension to everything we've seen since. It turns her silence into performance, her calm into control, and her carefully chosen words into the armor of someone guarding a secret too big to break.
Now, I think Khloe Kardashian is maybe the more likable of the Kardashians, has probably always been one of the more likable. Matt has been one of the more likable of the Kardashian orbit, and her handling of this both in 2012 and now is a good example of why she did really brush it off pretty breezily when Guthrie asked the question back then and said, "I guess I don't know who my dad is," sort of jokingly, and here was pretty classy in response to Savannah Guthrie. But
we can trace the shift in Kris Jenner's behavior right after that moment. By 2014, the tone inside the Kardashian empire had changed. One leaked email from Kris's attorney to executives at E! News warned them to stop speculating publicly about Khloe's paternity or face immediate legal action. It wasn't a request. It was a line in the sand. That single message confirmed what industry insiders had whispered for years. Kris doesn't ignore rumors. She eliminates them. Whether it's journalists, former staff, or ex-associates, the playbook is always the same. Threats first, lawyers next, silence guaranteed. Behind the scenes, multiple entertainment reporters have described receiving cease and desist notices just for referencing Khloe's resemblance to Alex Roldan. In one case, a former producer claimed that a story planned for a major tabloid was abruptly pulled after pressure from the top. The pattern is unmistakable. Every time someone gets close to the truth, the walls close in. Fast forward to 2023, when a leak from a producer working on the Kardashians sent the internet spiraling again. During post-production, the anonymous staffer claimed that Khloe broke down after rewatching the DNA episode from a decade earlier. According to their account, she muttered something that stunned the room. "Mom knows I know." Those 4 words, if real, mark the moment the facade finally cracked. They paint a picture of a woman exhausted by her own family's mythology, stuck performing the role of dutiful daughter while privately living with the knowledge that her father's identity has been rewritten for cameras and contracts. The producer claimed that the footage of her breakdown never aired, and the show's editors were told to cut around it. The version the public saw was smooth, controlled, and emotionless, exactly how Kris would have wanted it. Everything in this story, every contradiction and correction, circles back to Kris Jenner. She's the common denominator, the architect of the Kardashian machine. In the 1980s, long before she became a manager, she was the glamorous young wife of a high-profile attorney moving in circles where loyalty and reputation were everything. Her admitted affair during that marriage didn't just end a relationship, it created a lifelong liability. The timing of that affair lines up almost perfectly with Khloe's conception. That's why so many in Kris's former social orbit, stylists, assistants, even one former housekeeper, claim that the gossip never went away. People who knew the family in those years have said that Kris's attempts to keep everyone under NDA were relentless, even decades later. It's the kind of overcorrection you only make when the truth could cost you everything.
No, I'm happy today. I'm choosing happy, but so much of that came really when I was in my 40s, maybe my last 39th year, because I realized how much of a dark cloud I felt was surrounding me in my 30s, but
we can see how that strategy evolved over time. From the early days of keeping up with the Kardashians, Kris shaped her daughter's narratives with precision. Every relationship, every heartbreak, every misstep became content, except this one. When the O.J. Simpson theory resurfaced in the early 2010s, Kris publicly denied it, calling it a disgusting rumor. But she never addressed Alex Roldan, the man who was quietly pushed to the edges of the story. His name rarely appeared in interviews, and whenever it did, the segment was either pulled or re-edited before airing. A former editor once described it as the one topic that could shut down a production meeting in seconds. That kind of silence doesn't come from uncertainty, it comes from fear. Meanwhile, Khloe herself has kept playing the part. Every year, she posts loving tributes to Robert Kardashian, often with captions that sound like closure but read like coded guilt. On what would have been his birthday in 2025, she wrote, "I will forever hold space for you." Fans flooded the comments with sympathy, but some noticed the phrasing. Hold space isn't the same as I miss you. It's the language of someone honoring a memory while acknowledging distance, like a person saying goodbye to an idea, not a father. We can't help wondering if that post was less about grief and more about acceptance. Is this the tribute of a daughter who still mourns her dad, or a woman who finally understands that the man she's mourning was never truly hers? That question pulls us back to the psychology of control inside the Kardashian brand. Everything about their public lives is curated. Relationships launched on magazine covers, apologies issued through Hulu confessionals, and family conflicts resolved just in time for a season finale. But if the paternity mystery is real, it's the one storyline Kris Jenner could never monetize. How do you profit from a secret that, if proven, could rewrite the very name that built your empire? That's the paradox at the center of this story. The Kardashians have turned every scandal into strategy, except this one. And maybe that's why it's endured for so long, because while everything else in their world is negotiable, this particular truth isn't.
They don't realize that we're on TV or anything. Like, they don't know the difference because we're not talking about it. And I just think that's
impressive.
I think that's so funny to me that she's like, how does somebody know your name? Or she'll say, why do they want a picture with you? I go, maybe she likes my hair. Like, I always try to say like something and brush it off. I don't know. I don't want to make a big deal out of it. You know, for my kids, true, she has an iPad that they can watch shows or whatever when doing her hair, but I have limited iPad time. And I tell her she can't have a phone until she's...
We also can't ignore the emotional cost. People close to the family say that Khloe's relationships, especially her turbulent connection with NBA player Tristan Thompson, reveal a pattern of searching for stability she never truly had. The constant testing, the public trust issues, the obsessive need for verification, it all echoes back to that unresolved question of identity. It's as if she spent her adult life trying to prove loyalty to men, to family, to anyone who might stay. And that, in itself, may be the real tragedy behind the glamorous facade. A woman raised in a brand built on image, carrying the weight of a secret she never chose. In the years since Robert's passing, Kris has built herself into one of the most powerful figures in entertainment. Her management style is legendary, ruthless, efficient, unflinching. But even empires built on control have cracks. For all her careful planning, the rumors persist, surviving lawsuits, edits, and time. Because what makes this story so impossible to bury is that it's not just gossip, it's generational mythology. It challenges the origin story of the most media-savvy family on the planet, and as long as there's no definitive answer, every post, every leaked quote, every unguarded look becomes another clue. We followed this thread from whispered confessions to leaked emails, from deleted jokes to emotional breakdowns, and every sign points to a truth hiding in plain sight. Maybe Khloe's public defiance wasn't rebellion, but surrender. Accepting that the truth, once spoken, could unravel everything her family built. Maybe Kris's silence isn't about shame, but survival, protecting a brand that can't afford another fracture. Or maybe, after all these years, the truth has already been revealed privately, and what we're seeing now is just the performance of denial.
What's your question?
Hi, Savannah, if you could redo one interview on Today, what would you do differently?
Well, I did remember this. I had Khloe Kardashian was on, and it was toward the end. There had been these rumors that her father, Robert Kardashian, wasn't really her father.
Yes.
Yeah, and I didn't really want to ask it because it was kind of like probing and personal and intrusive, but I felt I was new, and I was like, oh, I feel like they want me to.
Either way, one thing is certain. The Kardashians have spent years turning their lives into television, editing reality until it feels like myth. But what happens when the biggest story, the one that could shatter the image they've perfected, is the one they'll never let us see? What if the secret that built the empire is the same one that could bring it down? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Could Khloe Kardashian's real story be the scandal that even Kris Jenner can't control? Until next time, keep your eyes open, your receipts ready, and remember, nothing in Hollywood stays hidden forever.